What's up, Tailgaters? My name is Tailgate Nate. Welcome back to my channel. And today we are going to be continuing our weekly series on top 10 players in positions around college football. Last Saturday, I should say, we did the quarterback position. So that was my personal top 10 quarterbacks coming into this year. And today I'm going to be giving you my personal top 10 running backs coming into this year, guys I expect to explode or guys I just really like. Again, I like some guys more than others. So if your favorite player is higher or lower than what you expect, you can yell at me in the comment section down below. I just mind you, be careful what you say. And let's be nice to everyone, shall we? Everyone has their own opinions, just like I have mine. This is my opinion. Hey, be sure to leave a like. Continue to hit the subscribe button as well. I would like to hit 300 before the start of the season. I've said that a lot, but I would really like to get there if possible. It's not the end of the world, but it would mean a lot because let's continue to grow the channel. And now let's talk about running backs. There are a lot of running backs that honestly deserve to be on the list, but you know what? You can only fit 10. I feel like I've put out what are going to be the 10 best running backs in 2021. And here are my top 6 honorable mentions. Now, I only fit 6 guys on here. But really, I could fit a whole lot more guys. You have Keontae Ingram, a transfer from Texas over to USC. Lynjay Dixon at Clemson. Letty Brown at West Virginia. Max Borghi at Washington State. So many other names that you can throw out there as well that are going to be fantastic players this year. There is no doubt about it. But these were the 6 guys that I kind of debated on switching in and out of my top 10 the most often. So you see 2 Big Ten guys right there. Master Teague representing my Ohio State Buckeyes, and then Tyler Goodson representing the Iowa Hawkeyes. Both of these guys are 2 of the best backs in the Big Ten. However, not the best. You're going to see him in a little bit. And these 2 guys are absolutely fantastic. And I think if Master Teague can get over struggles and Goodson, now that he's the lone back with Mekhi Sargent gone, I think both these guys are going to have monster seasons in 2021. On the right-hand side of your screen, you see 2 guys from the SEC. That's South Carolina's Kevin Harris on top and Isaiah Spiller from Texas A&M on bottom. Both of these guys can really game out as well. I like both of these backs as well. They just missed my top 10. Jarek Broussard is here at another honorable mention representing the Pac-12, and he is going to have a solid season at Colorado this year. Definitely is the best running back in the Pac-12 by my mark. Maybe except Keontae Ingram, but I think Jarek Broussard is a little bit better than Keontae Ingram, or I think we'll just have a little bit of a better season, right? And then a guy that you might not have heard of. His name is Sincere McCormick, and he is from the University of Texas at San Antonio Roadrunners. And if you have a chance to watch UTSA play this year, do it, because I watched the game of theirs last year, and my eyes were glued to him. The entire game, I wanted to know where he was. I watched him, and he's a fantastic player to watch and should be really good in 2021. Let's get into my top 10. And at number 10, I have Chris Rodriguez. We're going to read through the stats. And if you're not familiar, I give 2 kind of scouting report type, analytic, not really analytic, but like 2 scouting report type comments about him. And then I ask a question or tell you something that I need to see improve. In 2020, Chris Rodriguez, 119 carries for 756 yards and 11 touchdowns along with a single catch. And that catch went for 12 yards. Kind of trivial, but still happened, right? I think the motivation factor for Chris Rodriguez is going to be huge. Why? Well, he's been playing as a second, third string his entire career. His first couple seasons at Kentucky, he hasn't even started a game. And then all of a sudden last year came about. In his last 4 games, he was averaging around 120 yards per game in his last 4 this year. And a lot of people say 2020 was his breakout year. Now, he is an explosive playmaker and can really drive it into he's a phenomenal playmaker, can create his own lanes, can do anything you want out of a really solid running back. But the thing I have for him is a lot of people are going to say, yes, last year was his breakout. We really saw what he can do. But I'm wondering if he can, quote unquote, break out again, meaning what can he do if he has a full season? I think if he can do 756 yards in a shortened season where he didn't start at every game, he can easily do 1,000. But I got to see how he performs over a full season for him to be higher. But I think the sky's the limit for Chris Rodriguez. He could absolutely be the leading rusher in America this year, as could anyone on this list. But Chris Rodriguez, I really like. I want to watch him the first couple games, see how he does on a Kentucky team that should be much improved. He's at number 10. Number 9, I have Kennedy Brooks. Now, he did not play in 2020, so we're going to look at his 2019 stats. 155 carries for 1,011 yards, 6 touchdowns, along with 10 receptions and 79 yards. So, Kennedy Brooks. And he was on a team, an Oklahoma team that ended up making the college football playoff back in 2019. Of course, lost to the LSU Tigers. He's a very powerful back. And, he'll fight to get that extra 1, 2, he'll fight to get that extra half a yard. Really is that kind of player. He is that good. Has exceptional rusher vision. Look, if the hole is not there, he'll create one, and whatever hole there is, he'll find it, and he will exploit any weakness in the defense that he sees fit to get the best run possible. The only thing that I have for him is, will taking the year off help or hurt him? Now, of course, you can't fault him for taking the year off. He had COVID concerns, obviously, not his personal health or anything. He was just like, yeah, I don't know, playing is the best idea, but decided not to transfer out. They didn't end up going to the NFL, and now coming back to play some college football. Kennedy Brooks is going to be a really solid player, and on an Oklahoma team that looks like one of the best in the entire nation. Yeah, I would bet on Kennedy Brooks to have a really, really good season. He is at number 9. Number 8 for me is a guy that I feel like is just a little bit underrated on the field as what he can do. This is Jerrion Ealy, a running back from Ole Miss, and he was kind of in a similar situation with Matt Corral. I was like, do I put him in my top 10? Do I not? And the more and more I got reading about him, the more and more I felt like it was right that he's in my top 10. So he is here at number 8. We look at what he did last year: 147 carries for 745 yards, 9 touchdowns. And then receiving wise, 15 catches for 155 yards and 1 touchdown receiving. He has a great quarterback in Matt Corral. Now, of course, Matt Corral not on my top 10 quarterback list. Was an honorable mention. He's just got to cut back on the interceptions. Had 11 in 2 games. I just got to see that go away. But every other game he looked good. Anyways, talking about Jerrion Ealy, he is a sudden, explosive playmaker. You think you could have him down, and then bam, he makes a move and cuts back in, and he's gone. Just like that. You cannot sleep at all on Jerrion Ealy. You got to know where he is at all times. He's a very creative playmaker as well. Now, creative playmaking is a hard thing to do. What I associate to be a creative playmaker is someone who basically calls an audible mid-play. So if it's like a halfback draw and he sees, okay, going up the middle is not going to work, he'll bounce it to the outside. He's a very creative playmaker. He writes his own plays. He is phenomenal. Can he finally break 1,000 yards? And this is the interesting thing with Jerrion Ealy, is I don't think the stats tell the entire story for Jerrion Ealy. And I think it'll ring true this year as well, because with Matt Corral and Lane Kiffin, it's going to be an offensive team. So I think he's going to score a lot of touchdowns this year. But through the air, I think Matt Corral is going to go deep, which means wide receivers are going to catch a majority of the passes. And he's a pretty solid dual threat wide receiver. So I don't think the stats are going to tell the whole story for Jerrion Ealy in 2021, but he is a top 10 running back in my opinion. He's at number 8. Number 7 was a late addition to this list because the more and more I got reading about him, the more and more I was like, wow, this kid is actually pretty good. That's Tank Bigsby of Auburn. Look at what he did in 2020. His freshman year, 138 carries for 834 yards, 5 touchdowns with 11 receptions and 84 yards. He's a 2021 breakout candidate. Not to pat myself on the back, but I'm going to do it anyway. Breece Hall last year was the best running back in America. And if you remember, or you were around on the channel, if you're an OG of the channel, pretty much everyone here is by this point. But if you were a really early watcher, you'll know that I really liked Breece Hall last year. I thought Breece Hall could be a 1,000-yard rusher, leading rusher in America type player, and he did exactly that. Now, I'm not saying Tank Bigsby is my guy to do that this year. However, Tank Bigsby is still very, very good. And Tank, that's a fitting nickname for him, right? Because he plays like one. He is a tank. I mean, look at him. He's built like a tank. He runs like a tank. He runs over people like a tank. He runs through people like a tank. Yeah, there is no way that you are stopping Tank Bigsby out in the open field. My one thing, and it's not even a Tank Bigsby improvement because he showed me a lot as a freshman. Can the offensive line for Auburn improve? And that's the thing. With as good as defensive lines are going to be in the SEC, just take a look at Alabama, Texas A&M with DeMarvin Leal there. LSU could be solid as well. Florida, if the playmakers step up and the defense finally gets better, which probably isn't going to happen. But there are a lot of solid defensive lines in the SEC. And for the offensive line for Auburn, it's never usually been great. Now, I do expect some improvement this year with Brian Harsin coming in at head coach, but I think that's the key. If Bigsby wants to get over 1,000 yards, he's got to rely on his offensive line, but he is my number 7 back in the nation. Number 6 for me is a guy that if you don't know, what are you doing? You got to get to know Deuce Vaughn. Deuce Vaughn, a running back for the Kansas State Wildcats, a team that's not great, but Deuce Vaughn, he is really stellar. 123 carries for 642 yards and 7 touchdowns last year. And you might say, yeah, okay, the Big 12 played as full of a season as you can get. Well, take a look at his receiving stats. 25 receptions for 434 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's phenomenal. That really is phenomenal. He is the epitome of a dual threat running back. And in my opinion, is the best dual threat running back in the entire nation. And he has excellent vision as a runner as well. His runner vision, 10 out of 10, 100%. He'll find the holes. He can bounce it to the outside, reads the defense really well. This guy is a phenomenal player. Can he become a national household name? Will people be talking about Deuce Vaughn this year, next year, going into the NFL draft? The answer to that is yes, or at least they should be, because Deuce Vaughn really is that good of a player. I think Deuce Vaughn is going to have an amazing season come 2021. Deuce Vaughn for me is at number 6. Number 5 is Zamir White. Zamir White to me is a very interesting player. 144 carries with 779 yards and 11 touchdowns last year with 6 receptions and 37 yards. He's a phenomenal power running back. He really is. He's a lot like Nick Chubb, DeAndre Swift, other guys to play at Georgia, a lot like, a typical Georgia running back. And what do you expect from power back? Incredible strength. That's exactly what Zamir White has. Very hard to bring down in the open field. He's very surprisingly elusive as well for Zamir White, really speedy. Well, I say that, but that's also one thing that he needs to improve on. Now, speed is not something that you can outright teach. Agility and elusiveness kind of is, or at least you can train yourself to do that. I know I just said that his elusiveness and his speed are pretty solid. Yeah, but they got to get a little bit better. He's got to be a little more shifty back there. He's got to make the defenders think. He's kind of running the plays a bit too much. But I do think that Zamir White can have a really, really good season in 2021. For me, Zamir White is at number 5. All right, getting into some of the more exciting players, right? Bijan Robinson, number 4, Texas Longhorns. A lot of people are hyping about this kid, and I think the hype is deserved. If you saw what he did late last year for the Texas Longhorns, especially in the Alamo Bowl against Colorado, man, there is no reason to not like this kid. 86 carries, 703 yards for 4 touchdowns, along with 15 receptions, 196 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He has great vision and lots of patience. He'll wait for a hole to open up. He will. And now with Steve Sarkisian here at head coach, that also could end up being his downfall a little bit, is maybe being a little too patient. But he's got lots of patience. He knows when his time comes, and then he will use that great vision to exploit that. He's a great pass catcher. Now, I know the stats are like 15 catches, 196 yards, typical wide receiver, that has a big game. But for Bijan Robinson, I think that's only the start of, what he can do. I mean, again, that's a good wide receiver having a breakout game. Almost 200 yards receiving over the season. I have a feeling Bijan Robinson can become a 50 reception per game kind of player. I just think he's that good. Now, there are some people that are saying he might be able to compete for the Heisman. He might be the running back to do it, if not Breece Hall. And there's a lot of hype surrounding his kid. So my question is, can he live up to all just the Heisman hype, or I should say the Heisman level hype, because this kid is getting a lot of praise, a lot of attention. And my answer is yeah. I think he's going to be really good. Why else would he be number 4 on my list if I didn't think he was going to be really good? What do you want me to do? Come on, oh man, number 4? No, he's not going to do good. No, this kid is going to do very well in 2021 on a Texas team that overall I'm unsure about. You can be sure of one thing: Bijan Robinson's a top 5 running back in the nation. He's at number 4. Getting into the top 3 here. Number 3 for me, Kyren Williams, 211 carries for 1,125 yards and 13 touchdowns in 2020. 35 receptions for 313 yards and a touchdown as well for Kyren Williams. I absolutely adore Kyren Williams, probably more than a lot of people. This is probably the highest you might see Kyren Williams rated. I'm just going to put it out there. You might say, well, you know what? He's too high. Go ahead. I absolutely love Kyren Williams. Not just an incredible running back, but he's an exceptional pass catcher. And last year, kind of his breakout season. He has great agility, great physicality. We saw it in the game against Clemson. We didn't see it quite as much in the game against Alabama because Alabama just dominated that game, and Alabama wasn't even playing 100%. Not like they didn't have a full roster, but like, no, they weren't playing 100%. Anyway, past in the past, Kyren Williams is a phenomenal back, and I think is not necessarily underrated, but is overlooked as being a top 5 running back in the nation, which I think he absolutely has the potential to be. For me, though, consistency is key in 2021. If he wants to prove to everyone that he's a top 5 back in the nation, which I think he can be, got to be consistent. When you look at the stat sheet, he'll have like a 200-yard game and then a 50-yard game and then a 250-yard game and then a 25-yard game. So consistency is the name of the game for Kyren Williams. But I think if Kyren Williams can get 100, 120 yards per game, we're going to be talking about this guy come April. And that is my prediction for Kyren Williams. I absolutely love this kid. I think he's going to do phenomenal things this year for the Irish. He is at number 3. Getting into the top 2 here, you might be able to guess who they are by now. Number 2 for me is Mo Ibrahim. Now, I already talked about it a little bit. Last year I called Breece Hall's breakout year. Now, last year was kind of a breakout year for Mo Ibrahim anyway, but I'm calling it this year. Mo Ibrahim will be the leading rusher in America after the season is over. I would place money on that if I could. I'm legally not old enough to be able to. But Mo Ibrahim is a phenomenal running back. We'll take a look at what he did in the shortened Big Ten season. 201 carries. Crazy. 1,076 yards. That's even more crazy. 15 touchdowns. Now, that's just insane. That has got me right there. The 15 touchdowns in what? 6, 7, 8 games that Minnesota played last year? 8 receptions for 53 yards as well. So a lot more of a runner than a pass catcher. And you can see how explosive he is just by reading that stat line. I mean, wow, that stat line is incredible, especially for the few amount of games that Minnesota actually played. I think Ibrahim had what? Back-to-back games where he had 4 touchdowns, 400 yards, something like that. Now, I think it was back-to-back games with 4 touchdowns. The man is insane. The offense for Minnesota really does drive through him. He can turn it from 0 to 60 or from 1 to 10 really quickly. He can stop on a dime and then take off. He is very good at that. I want to know if he and the Minnesota offense can be driven to a 2019-like season, because that's going to make him look a lot better. That's going to put him in the spotlight. And I think it's spotlight that he deserves. Everyone's talking about Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Deuce Vaughn, guys like that. People need to start talking about Mo Ibrahim. He's at number 2. And of course, you guessed by now who's at number 1. The leading rusher in America last year, Breece Hall. Still my number 1 running back coming into next year. 275 carries with 1,572 yards, 21 touchdowns last year. My goodness, Breece Hall. Did I call it or what? 23 receptions, 180 yards, and 2 touchdowns as well through the air. He's excellent in all facets of the game: running, passing, blocking, maybe even throwing the ball. Who knows? Breece Hall is just all around a very, very good player. He's a very instinctive runner. If he feels like he should go one way, he's going to take it, and it usually works out for him. His instincts have not failed him from what you've seen. I want to know if he can be the number 1 back again. I called it last year. Am I calling it this year? I think it's going to be close between him and Mo Ibrahim, especially with the way that Minnesota and Iowa State's offenses are going to work this year. Because Minnesota has Tanner Morgan coming back along with Chris Autman-Bell, but the offense is going to drive through Mo Ibrahim. With Breece Hall, Brock Purdy is still there. So I think it's going to be very close, but I'm excited to watch all of these running backs that I've mentioned in this video in 2021. We're going to leave it here at Breece Hall. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, remember to leave a like, comment down below what you think of this video. You can also hit the subscribe button. If you find yourself coming back at all too, if this is the second, third, fourth, fifth video you've watched of mine, hit the subscribe button because you're coming back anyway. And remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing another preseason power rankings, and we're going to be doing the Big Ten Conference. Goodbye.